Welcome to the EarthWorks Podcast, where our team will share the jargon of carbon from many of our turf friends from the past 30 years.
Hello all and welcome to the EarthWorks Podcast. This week I'm your host, Jack Higgins, and I'm sitting here in a sun-filled office on a beautiful winter sunny day at Fairmont Country Club, being hosted by my man, Pat Quinlan. Pat, thank you so much for having me here in your office.
Well, Jack, thanks for coming. Appreciate you coming out to Fairmount. We've known each other a long time now.
That's right.
And again, we love your products, but we love more when you come to visit and have you out on the course. And now it's winter, but first time on the podcast, big time listener. So I'm happy to be on the show.
I love that, man. That's really cool. And we've been spending some time together recently because it's winter and you got all the events. We just came back from Phoenix last week, and that was a great time.
It was a great show. I thought it was very well attended. My seminars were great. I took a field trip, which was also wonderful, and always good to meet when you can, wear short sleeves in the winter and. Played a little golf. I'm not going to lie. Played a little golf.
Great. Did you play in the tournament?
I don't play in the tournament. I played with a friend of mine at Greyhawk. It was awesome. Really had a good time. And it was just good to catch up with everyone.
Yeah, for sure. And it was a cool venue. It was interesting. There was there were things that were great about it. We were rocking and rolling at the EarthWorks booth, and I also did get other feedback of people really enjoying a lot of the talks. Some people were really, and also some interesting kind of organic focused or carbon based focused, soil focused, biological focused sort of talks I heard about too.
I think there was a lot of that. I think even some other companies, the biologicals are definitely in the forefront now, where obviously they weren't when Joel started. He was the voodoo guy, but now, it was in the forefront out there for sure. Only maybe upstaged by all the robots that we saw. But
robots and biologicals, yeah, good call. That is it's kind of like a hashtag of the 2024.
Pretty
GIS.
Different ends of the spectrum, but you're right. Robots and biologicals for sure.
Okay, interesting. So you mentioned Joel back in the day. Let's get a little kind of history on you, Pat. How long have you been at this? What's your background? And when did you first come in contact with EarthWorks as well?
So I'm from New Jersey originally. I went to the school, University of Rhode Island. My family is in the funeral business, so it might be the first son of a funeral director that you've had on the podcast.
Very, very, very possible.
So I worked with him when I was younger, and quickly realized that wasn't going to be for me.
What town is that in?
They were in Clifton.
In Clifton, right?
I don't want to go down the rabbit hole, but since 1896, it was in the family business. Back then, it was just a storefront because you were laid out at your home, not in an actual funeral home. That changed obviously now. So I quickly realized that wasn't going to be for me. I enjoyed playing golf with my dad. He was a member at Glen Ridge Country Club back in the day. And I worked landscape construction and I loved it, but then I kind of figured out I could do this two ways. So I decided to go to the University of Rhode Island for turf grass management. I did internships at Upper Montclair with Red Dickinson. I don't know if you remember him.
Do not.
That was a long time ago.
Long-time superintendent?
He was there for many, many years. He actually hosted LPGA, senior PGA, and regular PGA events throughout his career at Upper Montclair.
Okay.
Golf course is much different now than it was back then.
Interesting. So what years were you there? Was your first golf?
That was my first, yeah. So that would have been in 98.
98, yeah.
Right. So then after I graduated URI, I started out in the Westchester area, and quickly I had to commute from New Jersey to Westchester. Mm-hmm. That got old quick.
Mm-hmm. And expensive.
And I had a manual transmission car.
Oh, man.
So Fridays.
In traffic.
Yeah.
Yeah,
not
I
fun.
got you.
And then I went to Essex County as an assistant, and that was probably my first experience at a high-end private club. We were doing a lot of work when I was there. There was a new superintendent at the time who's still there now, really transforming the club. We worked with Gil Hans back then, before Gil was Gil.
Yeah. Wow,
you
that's
know,
great.
I always like to say we worked with him and Jim Wagner when Gil's on the bulldozer, but no Rolex on the wrist back then.
That's great.
And then moved
Gil's
over.
from Philly, right?
Yes.
He's the guy from Malvern.
Yes, correct. And I believe Jim Wagner is from the same town.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure.
Very cool. Yeah, so they were essentially local guys doing the Jersey Turnpike commute.
Yes, correct. And that was before the Olympic course and those types of things. So then after Essex County, I moved over to Forest Hill. And met Frank Tishner, good friend of mine now.
That's right.
And taught me a lot. We didn't have a big budget, and had to kind of stretch things out, and it was frustrating coming from a high end, big budget club to a lower budgeted club was a challenge.
What year did you go to work for Frank?
2005.
Okay, so from 98 to 05, you took in a bunch of different greenkeeping styles, different places, different shops, different equipment, different gear, different irrigation. You kind of soaked all this in.
Correct.
But a lot of it was at high budget places.
The majority of it was, and then while I was at Forest Hill, I was applying for some jobs, and I applied to a 9-hole club, and I ended up getting hired there. And it happens to be right up the street from Fairmont, Madison Golf Club. It's a private 9-hole club that was built in 1896.
Nice.
It didn't start out as 9 holes, but
it was a full 18.
Nope. It was I think 7 holes originally.
Awesome.
So pretty cool
for
place.
a golf course that old, 1890. Because that you're saying the golf course was 96.
Yes.
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah. For a place that old, it didn't really matter how many holes there were. It didn't really matter out on the links in St. Andrews, and that's how old that. I think that's the age or the year, whether it was middle 1890s for the new course, the first kind of designed golf course. But anyway, so at least the first design golf course out there, the old kind of found its own design, which is so cool. So anyway, that's old for the Americas, man, in golf.
Yes.
1896
Yes.
is ancient. So
go.
cool. All right. So you were at Madison for a number of years.
For
right?
10 years.
Wow.
And that was my introduction to EarthWorks. And that's, I think, where we first met.
That's
was over
right.
there.
That's right.
And, we use your products, very frequently over there. And our liquids,
Right.
Your liquids were not as many products as you have now.
That's right.
But we use the granulars for sure. And we were chatting earlier, I had a big worm problem over there.
Oh, right.
And wasn't using C3 at the time, and I don't think we...
When you started there, C3 was not out yet.
Correct. So I wish I had it back then. We don't have... so after I finished at Madison, job opportunity came available 3/4 of a mile down the road at Fairmont, where we are today. Golf course was built in the 60s by Hal Purdy.
Okay.
And my first year here, I worked alongside the longtime superintendent who had been here almost 30 years.
Wow.
He was getting ready to retire. The club was going to put in a new irrigation system.
Was the irrigation system that old as well, or it wasn't in his tenure?
He did not put it in.
Oh, wow.
So it was put in shortly before he got here.
So yeah, you're talking a 35-year-old irrigation system.
Correct.
Wow.
He did the hard part. He sold the club on it. So, but
that's a nice departing gift to the next guy.
I'll tell you what, I never got a gift that expensive before. So yeah, it was very nice. Himself and the powers that be realized maybe he shouldn't design and have all the input in the system that he wasn't going to really use or use for very long.
Okay.
Which I think says a lot about himself as well as the club. So my first year, once we got into the summer, I was strictly just working with the irrigation contractor, keeping an eye on them. We ended up going with a Rainbird system, 5-row, all HDPE pipe, 2-wire. We really love it. We've had it now 6 years. Haven't had any problems. We've made a few additions. But I quickly realized at Madison I was on a hill, and for 10 years I sent all the water down to Fairmount, and realized now that I'm at Fairmount I got to deal with all that water.
Wow. So yeah, we spent this time talking about the new irrigation system, but it's the other side of water that you're concerned about.
It really is. And irrigation, you could put a number on how much you're spending every year repairing it, and labor hours, and drainage is a little bit more more difficult.
You're different. You're absolutely right. It's different. It's not as cut and dry as like, we had to replace this many heads. This, we laid this pipe, we did this. It's different because there's surface drainage and there's internal drainage and there's soil friability. And they're all working together.
Exactly. So Fairmount's unique that we butt up to the Great Swamp of New Jersey. So we're not actually in the swamp, but the edges of our property are federally protected, and you're not allowed to go in there. So we do have very heavy clay soils. Mm-hmm. There's been drainage done here for eons since the course was built. And I always tell, my Greens chairman and the members that if the conversation at Fairmount's not about drainage, we're not asking the right questions.
Yeah. No. Okay. That's really interesting because that is the cog in the wheel of the maintenance at Fairmont. It sounds like.
Absolutely. I mean, we are probably a day behind or a day and a half behind other clubs in our area after a rainfall on when we could actually get back on the course. We have wall-to-wall cart paths, so we can keep the members playing.
Right.
But sometimes maintenance is a challenge.
Let's talk about the geography, topography a little bit more, just to give the listener a sense as to where we are. When we say it's the Great Swamp, this is not like a swamp like that you find like in the Delta or like down like by the shore. It's not the Meadowlands.
No.
It's not Clifton.
No.
It's actually, this is where those two main rivers in North Jersey start. They both come out of this
Correct.
same area. The Passaic goes north and then kind of shoots down through Essex County, Hudson County, and Passaic County, and so anyway, and then the Raritan goes down into New Brunswick,
Right.
which is really cool.
It is.
I love the area here, and this is more like the swamp on the very plateau of a mountain ridge. Really, we're really at it's more like foothills, but it is the Appalachian right here. It is that same mountain ridge, and we're at the top of it. You have beautiful hardwood all over the place. You have beautiful outcroppings of and that's kind of the mystique of this area. And your golf course kind of represents that too, but it comes with an enormous challenge of water doesn't want to leave, or it wants to leave very slowly.
Correct. We're here for the reason that we take the water from the neighborhoods around us. While we have water features on the golf course, none of it's used for irrigation. Our irrigation water comes directly out of the wells into our pipes and onto the course. Okay. So all the water features that we have are just carrying the water from the neighborhoods to the Great Swamp. So while we have to deal with it and manage it, we don't use any of it.
Oh, really interesting. So you don't draw?
We do not. We draw out of two wells, which are on the property, and it's not terrible water by a lot of standards, but it's not the greatest water.
Okay.
But all the surface water, we capture it in drains to leave the property, but we do not.
You don't have a surface drainage pond. Yeah.
Correct. No.
Yeah, it just flows through.
Yep. Yeah.
Which poses trouble because you just lose control. It's another thing that you're not controlling, really. You're kind of you're the bypass.
Correct. So while tons of drainage was done, all over the place, when we did the irrigation system, we had to use over 1,000 4-inch couplers to repair all the drainage that we went through. If that gives you an idea of how many drains are out here.
Wow.
But what we did 3 years ago, we started doing internal drainage in the greens, and almost more importantly, we started doing internal drainage in the fairways.
Okay.
So
everything is old push-up, and it's existing soil.
Yes.
So your internal drainage in the greens, were they an XGD style?
Correct.
Okay.
So we did not have, we have one USGA green that had drains. None of the other 17, 18 greens had drains.
Just surface.
Just surface. And, they were heavy with thatch. And so we got on a good programs, good aeration program. We reduced fertility tremendously compared to what was done previously. We do weekly tissue testing, ISTRIC testing, really just to get a handle on everything that was going on here and put numbers on it.
Yep.
And then as we started to get better, the next step was, the internal drainage with XGD. Greens and approaches came out great. And I really struggled to push, but the club finally agreed to do 4 acres of fairways.
Oh, I love this.
And my pro came out and hugged me and said it was the best money the club ever spent. Our pro's been here for over 25 years. And the members quickly realized that this is a program we have to get on.
Hey, everybody. Kevin Hicks with EarthWorks, and we've got another podcast this morning. I'm lucky enough to have Benton Hodges on, and he's now with Mountain West Turf Technologies. Okay, so I am a dinosaur, and
yep.
I want you to walk me through, because you do some work with AI, and I have no idea where this leads,
For sure.
or any of that stuff.
Yeah.
And I know you dabble a little bit,
For sure.
but specifically, what I wanted to get from you is how will it help turf managers?
Cool.
Give me a couple of bullet points as to how do you get into it? You mentioned early on ChatGPT. So how do you get started in that? And then what would be the basic applications?
For sure. Yeah, I mean, the simple caveat of, man, I've dove a little bit into AI, and it seems like every day there's something new kind of thing.
Yeah, honestly.
So for sure. And so ChatGPT is definitely the one everybody thinks of. And that's the one I started messing around with. And their free version only has their text one, basically.
Okay.
But then they had $20 a month, and that's when I was like, let's see what this does. And that's when they have more, basically what they call specialized GPTs kind of thing. And so basically I could create one myself for a greens nutrient program. And it's basically it's memorizing that conversation you start, and it becomes more specialized. But at first I was just messing around in the text of ChatGPT. I was like, oh, this is cool. Write me a joke about this or something, or do this kind of thing. But I think where it really becomes powerful is when you really start thinking about these just different workflows, and how can I use it, not even necessarily to create a back end or a finished product that I'm going to post somewhere or use something, but just to like help you think. And, there's one really cool one that I've been using. It's like a PDF summarizer. I've been getting some giant long contract from Korecki that they want me to look over, and I'll read it, but then I'll pop it in that thing and say, give me the main bullet points, or pull out the financial information out of that kind of thing, and it will give you these bullet points. And I think that's really powerful.
Okay, so stop on that for a minute. So
yeah.
Again, dinosaur, right?
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
So there are these, like within ChatGPT, are these drop downs?
Basically, it's like you kind of click on it, and the left sidebar has, or the home landing page has different ones. And again, I'm pretty much, so there's ChatGPT, which is kind of the text. I think they call it LLMs, large language models, I believe.
Yeah.
And I think it's measured by how many total parameters or something. Again, I haven't dove too deep in all that jargon. But then they have DALL-E, which is their art generator. And so that was definitely the one that created the most stir on Twitter. And that's half the reason I think Firefly and Korecki reached out to me, just because I was posting interesting AI art. And so that was when I kind of started realizing you could combine these different little GPTs together. So at first, I'd type in, make me a moose on my golf course in front of the Tetons, and it would do all right. But then if I went into ChatGPT and said, give me an image description to take to DALL-E of a moose playing golf in front of the Tetons, then it'd give you this really wordy description itself. And then I would take that description to DALL-E and then plug that in, and then it'd give me a more descriptive. And even then, sometimes I realized that more descriptive didn't mean better. It could make it too confused. So I kind of realized it's almost just like your logical mind working with the AI and interacting with ChatGPT or whatever one you're using. It responds better when you walk it, Prompt engineering is what they're calling it.
All
So being good at asking it the questions. And again, I've followed a few on Twitter, and I get here's what's new in AI every day, and they have all these different classifications of methods now. There's one that was like the reactive method versus the chain of thought method kind of thing and then if you combine the two, it's even more accurate, because there's problems that they're having with ChatGPT. Basically, if you don't ask it to prove it, it'll just make up stuff.
Great.
And so that's why I really think you have to be A, transparent, and B, really read over what it produces if it's something you're going to post as a finished product somewhere,
Okay.
And especially if you're trying to post it as, I wrote this blog, on my website, I have a blog, but I just called it the AIT blog, the Assistant and Turf blog, basically, and it's my AI blog. And so I just did it honestly for search engine optimization kind of thing, and just churning out blogs to fill out the website. But I wanted to be like, this isn't me trying to portray myself as the own blogger. I'm saying this is an AI blog, and I think that's really where a lot of it's going to come down to, is transparency and stuff. But especially with turf, there's not a lot of finished product that we need to post kind of thing. But one of the ones I really think ChatGPT in the most simplest form could help is those daily update emails for superintendents. How many times have you sat down the day after Tuesday and been like, how am I going to write the same thing without saying the same words, saying the same thing, And so you could even just take Tuesday's email and say, regenerate this in a different form for me. Or if you want to get funny, be like, rewrite this in a Dr. Seuss tone, rewrite this in a Stephen King tone. You can really play with it.
Really?
And maybe then you get 3 paragraphs and you're like, well, my members aren't going to read 3 paragraphs. So like, condense it to a paragraph, and then boom, it's down to that. So I think those stuff that maybe makes superintendents a little more uncomfortable, the communications, that kind of stuff, the creative side, I think that's where it could help them, and just take that stress kind of off it of, shoot, I have to go back to the office and write the daily email kind of thing. Like, now it's just, I'll go back, do it real quick, and then get back out in the field kind of thing. And I mean, even the AI art, it's just so fast. And if you don't need it perfect, you can create a pretty catchy image right away to go with that email if you want, So I think simple ones like that are where superintendents are going to find it. But I mean, AI can be anything. It's machine learning. So all this technology that we're using is going to be using AI too. But as far as ChatGPT and what we think of as AI, I think that's the most simple use for superintendents.
It almost seems,
communication tools.
It almost seems like with the pace of change in that technology, it almost seems like, you listen to content creators and they're always trying to beat the algorithm every day. The algorithm
exactly.
for
sure.
Instagram
It's
is
very
changing
similar
all the time. So,
like I said, I followed a few of the AI people on Twitter, and suddenly they're, I guess there's some ranking of the best AI, and I guess this new one, Claude, is now technically better than ChatGPT, but then this guy says it's going to come back later in the week, and it's just too much for me. I'm like,
in the week,
I get
right?
it,
like that, it's happening that
it's just
quickly.
like, for sure, and just new announcements every day, because it's one of those things. It's like a snowball. The AI gets smarter, and then it just makes itself smarter, and just it's kind of hard to wrap my brain around. But it's been fun to kind of play around. And I even had a meeting with Groundworks, because they were like, maybe we can use this. We should talk to this, guy we already have a relationship going with. And so I talked with Tim and their CEO, and I think we're going to meet again this week to try and do some AI video or something for one of their promotions kind of thing. So if I think industry partners honestly could probably use it more than superintendents themselves. And I'm pitching to TurfNet to try and host a webinar for AI leverage for superintendents and industry partners sometime, that I think could be a very interesting, easy intro kind of thing, of basically intro to prompt engineering. And then I think even just saying prompt engineering makes it, you start to get it. You're like, okay, you can't just type something, and if you really want to use it to its power, you got to think about it. And then also just really identifying use cases kind of thing, and where you can use it kind of thing, instead of just knowing it exists in the back of your head. But if you have a dedicated, I'm going to use it for my morning email, then you start seeing the power of it, and then maybe you can use it for something else kind of thing. So
would
again,
that be
I think that gradual.
You think that's a starting point for a 50-something superintendent?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I sent out an email or a technology survey, which anybody listening should definitely go fill that out. I'm trying to just kind of get the numbers on what this adaptation is or who's interested in what, and from all over the country kind of thing. But
Yeah.
one, I have an option. Do you want me to email you some more info? And so this one guy was interested in AI. And so I typed up an email myself and I sent it to him. And then I was like, at the end, I was like, I'm going to take this email, put it in Chat GPT, and then I'm going to tell it to rewrite it in a more friendly, genuine tone or something, or a professional tone. And then I just sent him that email after it. So I think even just like taking your own emails and rewriting them, even if you don't see it, send them just to see the capabilities and stuff. Because I feel like when you just get on there and mess around for fun, you can see the power, but it doesn't really become obvious how to use it. You're just like, oh, this is cool. I'm probably not going to play with it or use it. But like, I think if it's something you're already doing, like an email or something, yeah, you can see how it rewrites it. I think that is like powerful and shows you like,
Think
gives
of a
you
task.
it gives you like your example, and then it shows you what it might could be, kind of thing.
Right. Think of a task that you don't like and assign it to
Yeah,
that.
exactly.
Right? Interesting. All right. So without getting political or anything like that, what are the societal dangers of this? I hear a lot of the negatives
sure.
too. Like it's going to take over the
Totally.
world and not going to need us anymore.
So it's pretty funny. When I was working on Turfman, Jeff, I helped him with his polar bear thing that he's been posting a bunch, and it gave me a square image, and they're like, I'm going to use it on a blog for Turfnet, and he's like, can you expand it out? And I was like, I don't know, we might have reached the end of at least my capabilities, kind of thing, as a graphic artist and AI guy. But then I got on Photoshop, and they have this brush that you just basically brush the background and then click fill, and sure enough, it filled it pretty much in the same style and seamlessly. And so 2 minutes later, I emailed Peter at Turfnet back, and I was like, good news, I did it. Bad news, that was like way too easy. Like maybe we are going to get taken over. So, even when I was talking with Tim from Groundworks, he was like, are people going to lose jobs over this? And I'm like, they're going to have to. Like, I mean, but that's just with anything. And I think the people that realize that it's not a perfect solution in anyways, and there's still going to need to be human interaction when using it, I think is basically, it's like, these companies that the early adopters and people willing to change, I think are going to thrive, and luckily our industry is a lot more human proof, I feel like, than some, kind of thing. Like there's in no scenario in my mind by 2050 are we fully away from a golf course being managed by humans, in my opinion. I mean, maybe I'm completely wrong, but other industries, they might be fully away from humans for the most part. How many staff writers on a newspaper are going to exist anymore in 2050 if you could have 3 that really do the main articles and 2 other guys who basically run the AI section,
it's kind of the cycle that history has shown in other industries.
I think so.
I mean, it's another cycle.
For sure. And it's not going to stop, and there's going to be regulations and ways to figure it out. And again, I think that transparency on what's AI and what's not, what's been helped with AI, especially, I feel for the creatives and the artists the most.
Mm-hmm.
But again, the artists that used to paint on canvas had to eventually get used to the new digital art that people wanted for their websites. And it's just an evolution. And, there will always be the need for human touch. Lee Strutt was on with Pat Jones. I think I reposted it, and he said something basically where it came down to golf is about the people. Golf needs people. Like, the robots are going to help us, but like in the end, it's a people person game industry. So like he doesn't, neither do I. We don't want the robots taking over, but if we can make our lives and better as turf managers through this technology and stuff, then I think that's the key, and not being afraid. And luckily, it's a pretty easy sell, even with autonomous mowers. Maybe the uninformed non-supers are like, oh, they're taking jobs from golf course workers, but we all know that
it's not
an endless amount of jobs on a golf course. So
that's right.
If we can get team member A off a rough mower for 8 hours a day for 2 or 3 days a week, then he can probably do something that improves the golfer experience a lot more.
Yeah.
Or let's do that project we haven't been able to do because May comes in the growing season, and then suddenly it's October. We all know that. So I think that's the super exciting part of how it can help all the courses. I think circling back where you're saying that, GPS seems to be attracted to the high end, but I think with a little education and a little foresight on an upfront investment, I think those like lower end and middle budget courses are where they can start making up some real cool ground, especially when you're a 5-man crew kind of thing. If you can free up that so much mowing, then wow, you're going to be able to level those heads or fix that irrigation that's been leaking for years kind of thing. So I think that's where it's exciting and hopefully where a lot of the maybe grumpier supers and turf managers might finally come around to like, this is going to help me, not take over my job. And I don't think too many think that, but there's still just that old school mentality in here and just slow to adapt. But actually talking with the tech companies, golf courses are a lot quicker to adapt than ag.
I believe that.
Retchy guy made a really good point of, if you go to a farmer, you better be able to prove that it is going to increase his yield, because that's all that matters,
Right.
Whereas a golf course, we might be like, yeah, let's try that out. That might be easier or give us better playing conditions kind of thing. You have a little more, the goal is a little more nebulous compared to just, we want more yield or we want higher profits kind of thing. It's playable conditions is a little more abstract kind of thing. And I think it all folds into the revolution of the MLSN and just doing less to get the same conditions. I think sometimes supers get a little bit like, we have to do something or else we're lazy. But why do it if we're going to get the same conditions? I'm definitely not trying to say we should never airify or anything, but have superintendents become too reliant on airifying? Maybe, and it's really exciting to see that now we're going to manage or measure organic matter. And
are we doing it just because we've always done it that way? Right.
And so, I think that kind of rolls in with that thing and being able, the technology is what's going to be able to measure. And once we measure it, then we can manage it kind of thing. So, I think it's kind of cool to see how it all builds on itself. And
cool.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at the clock. I like, we could do this for hours.
I'm happy to come back.
We're gonna. I'm definitely gonna have you back. I've got 100,000 more questions. So
totally.
So you kind of mentioned this earlier. So give me your 25-year outlook. What's two questions? What are the biggest changes that you think we'll see? And number two, what things won't change?
It's a good question. I think the biggest thing we'll see change is, if I really want to get specific, I think by then we'll be dialed on variable rate spraying and probably creating those prescription maps off of a few different things, maybe drone imaging with in-ground sensing or, some fixed imaging cameras in certain spots kind of thing. So I think that's one that, you talk to the, I talked with Sam Smith at Above Par Tech, who's a super smart guy. He had a recent maybe Talking Greenkeeper podcast that did a lot of good talking. And, sorry, I lost my train of thought there.
Prescription.
He was, variable rate spraying. And he was, they have that capability in ag now, but it's still, it's figuring out how to get the prescription map easily to then go straight to the sprayer. Because like right now we could probably do variable rate spraying on a golf course, but you'd probably have to go out there and map out that certain spot and be like, this is where I want this. But in 2050, I think this whole ecosystem is just going to become a lot more seamless. You know, your in-ground water sensor is going to turn on and off your sprinkler, or tell you how much it's going to water. Your drone's going to give you that variable rate nitrogen application. It's just all going to be a lot more integrated. I think I don't know what technology. I guess I wouldn't be surprised if we were fully autonomous mowers by then, even down to the greens. That's one that I think is a good example of almost being correct but not quite. The Cub Cadet RG3. We look back and it's like, why were we mowing the lowest amount of acreage and the thing that gets scrutinized the most?
Totally.
But at the time, you're like, oh yeah, that looks cool. Look at it mowing straight lines, like it.
100%
but then you just think about it, and
you
you're like, why were we not mowing rough this whole time?
Yeah.
Like,
Well, same on the fertility
So
side for me. I mean,
yeah,
I could sell a program for somebody for 3 acres, or we could look at the other 90, and
yeah, I agree.
yeah,
That's true.
that's always baffled me why the scale didn't
Mhm.
start at the other end and work its way
For
back.
sure, totally. And so yeah, I think I don't think it's out of the question that we have probably fully autonomous mowers by then.
Yeah.
I think the things that aren't going to change, I think we'll still be doing course setup. That's one that
Mm.
jumps out to me. I think you'll still
Mhm.
be out there cutting holes and probably moving T markers yourself, kind of thing.
And probably doing some
You
data
know,
entry at the same time
yeah,
to make the
exactly,
tech
for
work a bit better.
sure. Because as good as stuff is, an in-ground sensor can only be at that spot. So
Yeah.
in-ground sensors are great, but if I'm telling somebody to get an in-ground sensor, I'm probably going to tell them to do some other monitoring other ways.
Yeah.
Get a portable pogo or do that drone imaging that covers the whole property kind of thing. But yeah, the things that are still going to be the same, that's tough. I think we're still just going to be dealing with golfers. That's
Yeah.
never going to change
Hope so.
as long as golf courses are around. Yeah, exactly. Or else it's just no. Maybe the robots are going to want to play golf. Who knows?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Interesting.
I think beyond just pure technology, I think grass selection and just all that's just going to get so much better.
No
And
doubt.
just the new courses. I think that's the new courses being built right now are the ones that I think can take advantage of the technology the most.
Yeah.
You really have that foresight of, hey, we need this much power to
Set up
charge
the
our autonomous
infrastructure.
mowers out on.
Yeah.
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 And honestly, even just on a practical level, I've gotten excited on robotic mowers because, man, how fast could you put a 35-pound autonomous mower on sod once you put sod down? Pretty
Mhm.
quick, compared
Mhm.
to your normal rough mow. I helped build the course in Steamboat. We basically took over once they laid the sod down, and we'd set these high school kids out free, just walk mowing fairways.
Right.
We'd be like, don't worry about the pattern, just make sure every blade of grass is mowed. And they
Just
just
cut
be
it
out
all.
there doing the craziest thing. So yeah, if you could just have one out there doing it itself, kind of thing,
Yeah,
and
that's a
not
great
causing
idea.
ruts and stuff. I think the new courses are where it's a really exciting thing, and where I think currently you can get the most out of technology. But yeah, the stuff that's going to stay the same again. I think golfers cutting
Yeah.
holes in the greens, just that stuff. That's and I think it's going to be you're just going to be able to be so much more project management oriented instead of those daily tasks that bog us down.
Hi, everybody. This is Joel Simmons, and this is the EarthWorks Podcast. And I'm very excited. We have Jim Nagle with us today. And if you don't know Jim, you should. Jim Nagle has been an architect for a lot of years now, Jim, over 25 years,
Yes.
primarily working with the Ron Force Design Group. But you've got a fascinating background, and I'm really excited. But you and I met for the first time, and I've known of you for a very long time, and I've worked around you on projects that you've worked on for a very long time. And it was a real pleasure. I think we met on the 12th hole at Lancaster Country Club, didn't we?
For the first time. Absolutely.
Yeah,
It
which
was.
is interesting. And the first question I have to ask you is, who the hell designed that hole? Was that you guys? What a hole.
Well, let's just say that our first project with Lancaster, which goes back about 2004, 2005, and it was with Todd Biderfacher.
Yeah.
And it was kind of a pilot project. So we rebuilt the 12th green and the 13th green and then the surrounding bunkers. And that was sort of the test. That was the test. Like, are we going to be a compatible partner to Lancaster Country Club? And those were the days with Force Design. And, so yeah, the day of, I guess
12 like
day
before you
one,
guys-
I'm getting texts and from some of your clients saying, wow, you ruined the Women's Open for the world because Nelly Corda took the 10.
Yeah.
I was getting texts from Morgan Pressel, who was getting ready for the live broadcast, asking me about what's going on down on number 12.
So everybody's blaming you for 12.
I guess they couldn't blame for the fact that they were playing the hole wrong. But
Yeah.
that's what it is.
I tell you
But
what, though.
I'll be honest with you, if I may, Joe, when I was getting texts from Morgan Pressel, and she's asking specific questions, and obviously they're getting ready for the NBC or whoever is covering it that day. And I watched 10 groups come through, and it wasn't set up. I felt like Lancaster, when I was with Force Design, we had been a part of a number of USGA championships.
Yeah.
Lancaster was the perfect example of maintenance, vision, USGA vision, and architecture all being married together and being brought together. And the weather was perfect.
It was perfect.
The setup leading into the tournament was perfect.
Yeah.
And so when we had that with the world #1 golf for the women executing improper shots, things like that, I think people were immediately trying to grab onto all the USGA blew it again. The greens are too fast, all of these things. That wasn't the case at all. And I thought Nelly Korda was an absolute class act after the tournament when she said it was poor execution. And I watched a number of golfers come through that hole. And it wasn't about course setup. It wasn't about hole location.
No, not at all.
It was about green speeds.
Yeah, it's actually a beautiful hole. I mean, it's a beautiful golf hole.
Absolutely.
And yeah, I mean, I sat there. I spent most of my time on that hole because it was so much fun to watch.
It really was.
After all the controversy and all, I was down at the maintenance facility when that happened, and the whole, scuttlebutt is, did you hear what happened on 12? Did you hear what happened on 12?
It became a very famous hole.
Yes, very quickly.
International level that day.
But it's a beautiful hole. So what was it like before you guys started to redesign it? I mean, what was
it wasn't much different. The biggest thing was that it sat lower. So you
did. So it was that you actually elevated it.
Yeah. So you've been at Lancaster a number of times. And there's the little creek that runs in front. So there were a couple of issues going on there. One, it was poorly drained. And I'm not talking surface drainage. I'm talking the under.
Yeah. No, I know
subsurface drainage. The greens at Lancaster were rebuilt, I want to say in 96 or 97, the USGA specification.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't have laser scanning at that point. And in all honesty, Ron and I were not involved. But they rebuilt them as close to the original as possible. And that green, you could stand on the tees, and they used to have the old house to the left, but there were a number of trees. And when we first visited the property, you could see the leaves blowing in from the left, and literally they would get to the collar and stop.
Oh, so that's interesting.
That was the first indication that the airflow was not continuing across the greens.
Right. Yeah. There was nothing, obviously.
And secondly, when you when you build a USGA green, you have a 16-inch well, plus the drainage is built in below that.
Yeah.
And the drainage relative to the water elevation of the stream was not good. So we immediately picked up on the fact that the surface itself needed to be raised. By raising the surface,
so that was the purpose of the raising of the surface.
Yeah, you're pulling the drainage up out of the high water table.
Yeah.
And so, and I've told this story before that we leveled portions of it, not too much. The whole thing was kind of a lift. But when we rebuilt the green, and it was a company out of Western PA, they were doing the work at that time before Mott came in and really has taken over the construction. And when we had the well poured out and sort of the subgrade established, we had a rainstorm. And I was on site after that, right after that rainstorm, and I was kind of checking the subgrade. And when I saw that the water was never moving in a straight line, it was constantly moving in different directions, I said, guys, don't touch this. The slopes, the overall slopes were really good. The undulations mimicked and matched the rest of the golf course and what was originally there. But seeing that at no point did the water ever take a straight line, I knew there was something special there.
Oh, that's interesting.
We've got to, all credit to William Flynn.
Yeah.
But when you're trying to recreate something, it's very difficult to get it back exact. But I felt like at that point, seeing that subgrade, seeing the water flow, we had something really good there. And it's just a great little par 3, downhill par 3, danger behind, trouble in front, and a green that even at the green speeds that they want to run them to for member play and then the open is very challenging. But you just have to know that green and know where to play it.
Yeah, and that seemed to be the problem that whole week. I mean, there were people who were definitely, there were birdies, I sat there, watched a dozen of them. And then I watched a whole bunch of people throwing it into the water in the front.
Well, and the one thing, we talked about the surface, we talked about the bunkers, we talked about the stream, but and you were there on Thursday, we saw one
Yeah.
another.
Yeah.
The wind picked up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that wind, that particular wind, and the way it's everybody would talk about 12 at Augusta. It's a swirling wind, but the trees up top are moving. The flag is not, and at the tees you're feeling something.
Yeah.
So it that hole sort of embodies what's great about golf architecture.
Yeah.
You have hazards, you had an interesting green, and you had the impact of the environment. And in that particular situation, it was the wind. And I think that's the one thing people forget about architecturally. When we have these tree-lined golf courses, it definitely affects the flow of the wind across the property. And that when you get into a good tree management program, or in this particular instance at Lancaster, you removed that old home to the left.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, the wind that you might see at the surface of the green is not the same wind that is affecting the ball flight. And that's the beauty of golf, is when you take all these environmental factors and build them into a golf hole, that it just day in and day out, it's a different playing situation.
Yeah, well said. Actually, I mean that's really well said. I mean, if for those of folks that know Lancaster, I mean 13 was pretty unique too. So there was a house right there, and that's when you're saying this, it never even occurred to me because I've been there many times. Been there when the house was there, and now you guys removed the house and brought those tees back and opened that hole up quite a bit. But that had to have changed 12.
It had absolutely. It affected that when I mentioned the leaves blowing.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
One of our first. Well, and it kind of harkens back to always remember Dr. Mike Hertzen talking about this, where there was a particular green that he worked on, and at the time somebody flicked a cigarette off to the side, and that cigarette butt, the smoke just went straight up in the air.
Oh wow!
And about, I want to say 24 inches up, it took a right turn.
Turned hard, yeah.
And Dr. Hertzen said that's the elevation of the green. We need to change the elevation of the green because your airflow is that much different.
Oh wow!
I always remembered that. And the house that was there, it was an old house, an old spring house dated back to the late 1700s. People might say, well, why didn't you keep it? Well, structurally, the thing was falling apart on the inside.
It was a mess.
And so once they took that out, and you have to understand where 12 and 13 are in proximity to the natural wind flow, prevailing winds. Removing that house was probably a benefit to 12.
Yeah, that's interesting. I wouldn't have thought of that until we had this discussion. But yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Talk about the William Flynn original design. I mean, I love William Flynn's work. I mean, luckily here in the Pennsylvania, this eastern Pennsylvania quarter, we got tons of them, and every one of them is spectacular.
They're all great in their own right, and I know your backyard is Mr. Chissard at Lehigh.
My buddy Johnny.
And Lehigh, and here's the thing, Flynn, we've got the Philly Flynn.
Yeah.
And, you could look at Flynn had design styles that he repeated on a number of holes. And it wasn't like Rayner. He didn't have a Biarritz. He didn't have a Redan. He didn't have, all these different types of holes that were repeated. But he certainly picked up on a theme.
Yeah.
Par threes with a big bunker on the low side and two bunkers on the high side. Rolling Green is a perfect example where if you really look at the structure of each of the par threes, they're all very similar, but he played them at different angles, different elevations, different lengths, and he built the bunkers differently, he built the greens differently. But I personally, for me, Flynn and Hugh of Allison, they have very similar design styles, are my favorite architects.
Oh, really?
And blessed, and I say we because I grew up in Lancaster.
Yeah.
I now live in Pittsburgh, but I do a lot of work in the Philly area. And so that region is blessed with just some incredible golf courses designed by the same architect.
Yeah.
Ross dabbled a little bit in Philly with Golf Mills and Lulu and Aronimink. And then you have some, Tillinghast was grew up in the Philly area, and he did some work obviously at Philly Cricket.
Yeah.
And then he did some, like many of the architects, they all helped sort of finish Pine Valley, but most of his work is outside of the area. You have Alexander Finley, Thomas, and Wilson. You have all these great architects, but it really is Flynn that epitomizes sort of the Philly school of design and what he did there. And there's so many golf courses that you could say, you see Flynn at Manny's. Manny's is different because they've got the quarry holes.
Yeah.
And you've got Rolling Green, and Rolling Green is a great golf course because of the greens, because of the routing, because of the bunker styles and the elevation changes. Philly Country, I don't think Philly Country has really gotten its due in terms of how good it really is.
Design. Yeah.
It flies under the radar.
Yeah.
But when you look at the composition of 3, 4s, and 5s, Philly's really good. Huntington Valley.
I was just going to say, yeah.
Valley, but boy, is that a great spot. And I think if they really focused on some tree management and revealing that land out there, Huntington Valley would be all world. There's so many great golf courses. And people don't recognize the fact that Flynn did significant work at Concord. He was the original designer at Concord Country Club.
I don't know if I knew that.
He was brought in and he did significant renovations at Springhaven.
I did know that, yeah.
His design philosophies and coming from Hugh Wilson are evident in a lot of places. But the more time I've spent, and I will admit I'm biased. I grew up 20 minutes from Lancaster Country Club.
Yeah.
And I get to work there.
Yeah, it's not bad.
It's a blessing and it's an honor. But Lancaster seems to embody all that makes William Flynn great.
Yeah.
Whether it's the routing, which I'm not sure there is anybody that could rival him from a routing standpoint, his greens designs, his bunkering concepts. Philly Country Club, every hole is bunkered well and bunkered often.
Yeah.
And yet Lancaster, you could take the 5th hole, you could take the 7th hole, you could take a number of holes out there where he had that tasteful restraint, as we would say, but yet it's still a great hole. And so I feel like, and it was Tom Doak. I asked Tom one time, why was Lancaster a gourmet choice in his original writing of in his book? And he says Lancaster just embodies so much of what made Flynn great.